Hyun Jae-suk was known across South Korea as a ruthless billionaire, the iron-hearted CEO of HJ Holdings. His world was built on power, control, and pride. He didn't believe in love, much less compassion. Rumors whispered that Hyun despised black women, often making cruel remarks when his business empire expanded into Africa. To him, emotions were weakness and affection a dangerous illusion. But behind his cold eyes was a man hiding from pain. His mother had left his father for another man when Hyun was 10, and that betrayal turned his heart to stone. 2 years earlier, during an international business gala in Dubai, Hyun had met Emilia Tesfaye, a radiant Ethiopian medical researcher. She was invited to the event as part of a health initiative presentation. Her natural beauty, deep brown eyes, and gentle laughter had drawn attention from everyone, except Hyun, or so it seemed. That night, after a misunderstanding that led to an emotional outburst, Hyun had found Emilia crying outside the hall. For the first time in years, something inside him softened. One thing led to another. A night of shared loneliness, of whispered honesty, and unexpected passion. By morning, Hyun had disappeared. No note, no explanation. He told himself it meant nothing. But Emilia never forgot him. 2 years later, in a Seoul hospital, a 5-year-old boy named Eunho Tesfaye was rushed in for a rare blood transfusion after an accident. The doctors were shocked. The boy's genetic markers indicated a Korean father. Emilia, who had moved to Korea to work with a medical foundation, had kept her son's origins private. The hospital followed protocol and contacted potential genetic matches. To everyone's astonishment, Hyun Jae-suk's DNA matched perfectly. When the results were handed to Hyun, he felt his pulse freeze. "This must be a mistake," he barked, tossing the report aside. But the more he read, the more undeniable it became. The boy he saw in that hospital bed, with half-moon eyes and a dimple identical to his own, was his blood. Hyun stormed into the hospital room where Emilia sat by her son's bedside. The boy's small hand was wrapped around hers, peaceful even in sleep. "You lied to me," Hyun said coldly, voice trembling. Emilia turned slowly, her eyes glistening. "You left before I could tell you anything." The words hit him harder than any insult. Emilia stood, her posture calm but strong. "I never asked for your money or your name. Eunho is happy. That's all that mattered to me." Hyun's throat tightened. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. The ruthless billionaire who could destroy anyone in boardrooms was suddenly powerless before a woman he once dismissed, and a boy who called her mama. Days turned into weeks. Hyun began visiting the hospital daily under the guise of responsibility. But soon, he found himself telling stories to the boy, sharing snacks, and even smiling, something his staff hadn't seen in years. Eunho would giggle, "Appa, you're funny," without even realizing the truth. Emilia watched quietly from the doorway. Each time Hyun helped her son eat or whispered encouragement, her guarded heart began to thaw. One evening, as the city lights blinked outside the hospital window, Hyun whispered, "He looks just like me." "No," Emilia smiled softly. "He laughs like me." That simple reply broke his walls. Hyun offered to provide for the child, but Emilia refused money, only asking him to be a father. Slowly, Hyun began to change. His arrogance melted into humility, his coldness into quiet care. He would visit Emilia's small apartment in Itaewon, help cook Ethiopian food, and even learn a few Amharic phrases for Eunho. It was in these simple moments that love began to bloom. One rainy evening, after putting Eunho to bed, Hyun found himself standing close to Emilia. She looked up at him, her soft curls slightly damp, her eyes deep with emotion. "Why are you still here, Hyun?" she asked quietly. "Because I can't leave again," he murmured. "I found what I didn't know I needed, you." He leaned in slowly, this time not out of passion or impulse, but love. Their kiss was gentle, years of regret and forgiveness melting into one. Life after the hospital was both tender and uncertain. Hyun had never known what it meant to care deeply for someone. His world had always been about numbers, contracts, and power, not emotions. But Emilia and little Un-ho had begun to occupy corners of his heart he didn't even know existed. He started showing up at Emilia's apartment unannounced, always with a small gift. Sometimes a bouquet of white lilies, sometimes a Korean children's book for Un-ho, sometimes just coffee and silence. "You don't have to keep buying things," Emilia teased one evening, smiling as she set dinner on the table. Hyun shrugged lightly, his lips curving in an awkward grin. "It's the only way I know how to say, I missed you." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. For a man once feared by all of Seoul's business world, Hyun's vulnerability was disarming and beautiful. Their evenings together became routine. Hyun would pick up Un-ho from daycare. Even when his schedule was tight, the boy would squeal and leap into his arms, calling him Appa with pure joy. One chilly autumn evening, as orange leaves covered the streets, Hyun found Emilia on the rooftop, gazing at the city lights. She looked fragile, not weak, but delicate in a way that made him want to protect her. "Do you ever regret meeting me?" he asked softly, standing beside her. She turned to him, eyes glistening with reflection. "I used to," she whispered, "because I thought I loved a man who would never love me back. But now," he asked, voice trembling, "now, I see a man trying to love, and that's enough." Hyun looked at her, speechless. Then he took her hand, gently but firmly, and pressed it against his chest. "It's new to me," he murmured, "but I want to learn. For you, for him." Days turned into months. The cold-hearted billionaire slowly learned tenderness, the kind that comes not from passion, but from genuine care. He learned to braid Emilia's hair when she was tired. He learned to read bedtime stories in broken Amharic. And sometimes, when the boy slept, they would sit together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, the silence between them filled with warmth. One night, after a long day at work, Hyun found himself confessing, "I used to think love made men weak." Emilia looked up from her cup of tea. "And now I think not loving makes them empty." She smiled softly, eyes glowing with pride and affection. "You're not empty anymore, Hyun." For the first time, he believed her. But love, no matter how deep, is never without storms. News broke of their relationship. Photos of Emilia and Un-ho splashed across tabloids. Comments were cruel. "The black woman who trapped Korea's coldest billionaire." One headline read. Hyun's board members called it a distraction. His investors whispered that his emotions were weakening him. He tried to ignore it, but it stung. Not for himself, but for her. One evening, he came home and found Emilia crying quietly on the balcony. "They don't see me, Hyun. They only see my skin." He went to her, holding her tightly. "Then let them see my heart beside you. Let them see how wrong they are." His voice cracked, not out of anger, but out of love. For the first time, Hyun didn't fight to maintain control. He simply let her cry against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like a promise. That night, under Seoul's glittering skyline, they kissed, not to forget the pain, but to heal it. Weeks later, after dinner with Un-ho asleep in his room, Hyun quietly watched Emilia wash dishes, humming softly to a lullaby she used to sing in Amharic. He approached her from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist. She froze slightly, blushing at the unexpected touch. "Emilia," he whispered. She replied softly, her voice trembling with warmth. "I think I finally understand what love feels like." She turned slowly, her heart pounding. "And how does it feel, Hyun?" "Like peace," he said. "Like coming home after a long storm." She smiled, tears pooling in her eyes. And for the first time, he said the words he once thought he'd never say. "I love you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, the confession of a man who had found redemption through love. Their relationship deepened with time. Hyun began to attend community events Emilia organized for multicultural families. He donated anonymously to African student programs and quietly funded Ethiopian hospitals. Emilia, in turn, taught him gentleness, how to be patient, how to listen, how to forgive himself. She saw the boy inside him who had once been abandoned and chose not to fix him, but to love him through his healing. One night, while lying in bed beside her, Hyun whispered, "You healed me, Amelia." She smiled against his chest. "No, Hyun. Love did." And for once, the ruthless billionaire didn't argue. 6 months after Hyun's public confession of love, the mansion that once echoed with silence and cold marble now bloomed with laughter, music, and the scent of Ethiopian coffee. Hyun's housekeepers were still adjusting. Their boss, once the symbol of icy distance, now woke up early to cook pancakes with little Eunho on his shoulders, both of them dusted in flour. Amelia filled every corner with warmth. Family photos, fresh flowers, and soft Amharic songs that turned the mansion into a home. One morning, Hyun came downstairs wearing an apron that read, "Super Appa." Amelia laughed so hard she nearly dropped her coffee. "You've changed, Mr. Billionaire." Hyun grinned, slipping his hands around her waist. "No, I just found what was missing." And he kissed her forehead, the simple kind of kiss that says you're my peace. Though their love was strong, society still whispered. Some of Hyun's old friends avoided him at events, and his investors pushed for him to rethink his public image. But Hyun didn't bend. Instead, he made a bold move. He appointed Amelia as the head of a new foundation under HJ Holdings called Hearts Without Borders. It focused on healthcare access for African children living in Asia. When reporters questioned his decision, Hyun stood tall beside her during the press conference and said, "The woman beside me taught me that love is not color. It's courage. It's humanity. And it's the reason I am standing here today." The room fell silent. Cameras clicked. Amelia's eyes glistened as he took her hand. Right there before the world. That night, when they got home, she whispered against his chest, "You didn't have to defend me like that." "I wasn't defending you," Hyun replied softly. "I was defending us." Behind their mansion, Amelia began planting a small garden, hibiscus, roses, lavender, and a corner filled with Ethiopian tulips she had brought from her homeland. Hyun helped her every evening, even when his hands were rough from work. One evening, as the sun melted into gold and crimson across the sky, they sat together, watching Eunho chase butterflies. "Do you ever wish I wasn't who I am?" Hyun asked quietly. Amelia looked at him, puzzled. A man who once hated the very woman he'd fall in love with. She smiled softly, placing her hand on his. "No, Hyun, because that man learned how to love. And that's the only version I want." He turned to her, eyes shining with emotion. "Then let me keep learning, for the rest of my life." And he kissed her under the orange sky. Slow, deep, filled with gratitude. Months later, Hyun faced a massive business scandal, a betrayal by one of his closest. The stress consumed him. The press twisted every story, and he nearly lost control. One evening, he came home late, exhausted and broken. Amelia found him sitting alone in the dark study, his face buried in his hands. "You don't have to face this alone," she whispered, walking toward him. "You don't understand, Amelia. They'll destroy me. Everything I built." "You built walls before," she interrupted gently. "Now build trust. Build love. Build with me." Hyun looked up, his eyes wet. "I'm scared." She knelt in front of him, placing his hand over her heart. "Then let me be your courage." That night, Hyun cried, really cried, for the first time since childhood. And Amelia held him until the trembling stopped, whispering prayers in Amharic, her voice like a lullaby that reached even his wounded soul. A year passed. The scandal faded. Their love grew stronger, and Hyun learned that strength wasn't about perfection. It was about vulnerability shared with the right person. One snowy evening, Hyun took Amelia and Eunho to Namsan Tower, the place where Seoul's lovers sealed their promises with padlocks. As snowflakes danced around them, Hyun knelt before her. Not with grand gestures, but with trembling sincerity. "Amelia Tesfaye," he said softly, his voice shaking. "You healed me when I was nothing but pride and pain. You gave me a son, a reason to smile, and a home I never knew I needed. Will you make me the happiest man in Korea? And marry me? Emilia's eyes filled with tears as snow landed gently on her curls. Yes, Hyun. 1,000 times, yes. Eunho squealed, wrapping his little arms around them both. Appa, Ama. And in that moment, love conquered everything. Hate, pride, distance, and pain. Their wedding was small but breathtaking. A fusion of Ethiopian tradition and Korean elegance. The scent of frankincense blended with cherry blossoms, drums and gayageum strings playing together in harmony. When Hyun kissed Emilia under the golden lights, the world seemed to fade. Just two souls, healed by the love they once thought impossible. As the guests applauded, Hyun whispered in her ear, "You turned my curse into grace, my fear into faith." Emilia smiled through tears. "And you turned my loneliness into forever." In the years that followed, their story became a symbol, a reminder that love knows no color, no border, no pride too strong to be humbled by compassion. Hyun and Emilia's foundation saved countless lives. Their home became a place of joy and unity, and little Eunho grew up seeing what true love looks like. Not perfection, but two imperfect people choosing each other every day. On quiet nights, Hyun would still hold Emilia close, whispering, "Thank you for teaching me how to love." And she would smile, replying, "You always knew how, Hyun. You just needed a reason." And that reason was her. Married life came to Hyun and Emilia like the sunrise, slow, warm, and full of light. Their home was no longer a mansion of marble and silence, but a sanctuary of laughter and peace. Every morning, Emilia brewed strong Ethiopian coffee, its aroma blending with the scent of fresh jasmine that Hyun planted for her in the garden. He would sit by the window, watching her hum softly as she poured his cup, her curls glistening under the light. "Do you know what heaven smells like?" Hyun would say, smiling. "Coffee and peace?" she teased. "No," he whispered, touching her hand. "You." And every time he said that, she blushed as if she was hearing it for the first time. Their days found rhythm in the smallest things. Shared breakfasts, late-night talks, and long drives along the Han River with soft music playing. Emilia taught Hyun how to slow down. He taught her how to dream bigger. Sometimes, when the world outside felt loud and judgmental, they escaped to Jeju Island. There, barefoot on the sand, they'd watch Eunho build castles while holding each other's hands, whispering dreams of the future. One evening, as waves kissed the shore, Hyun turned to her and said, "Before you, I used to chase success. Now, I just chase sunsets with you." She leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling. "And you finally learned to catch them." A year into their marriage, Emilia discovered she was pregnant again. The moment she told Hyun, he froze in shock, then pulled her into a fierce embrace, laughing and crying at once. "Another chance to love deeper," he whispered against her neck. During her pregnancy, Hyun became overly protective, reading books on fatherhood, waking up at midnight to cook her cravings, and attending every appointment. When their daughter was born, her skin was soft caramel, her hair wavy, and her eyes bright and slanted like Hyun's. They named her Hannah, meaning one love, one family, one heart. Hyun cried openly as he held her. "She's our bridge," he said, "between two worlds, two hearts, and everything we've healed." Years passed, but their love didn't fade. It deepened. Their home became a museum of love and culture. On one wall hung traditional Korean hanboks. On another, Ethiopian woven baskets. They celebrated both Seollal and Timkat, blending customs and songs, laughter and prayer. At night, Hyun would tuck in with Eunho and Hannah, telling them bedtime stories, not about kings or dragons, but about courage, forgiveness, and a love that changed the world. And every night, when the house grew quiet, he would find Emilia in their garden, under the same tree where he had first told her, "I love you." He would wrap his arms around her and whisper, "Even now, I still fall for you." She'd smile and reply, "Then don't ever stop." 10 years later, when Hyun's company faced another financial storm, he no longer panicked. He had learned that home was not built on numbers, it was built on faith. When reporters questioned his focus, he simply said, "I no longer measure my worth by wealth. My richest treasure is waiting for me at home." That night, Emilia waited for him with candles lit across the dining room. She held his hands and whispered, "You've changed the meaning of love for many, Hyun." He smiled gently, eyes glistening. "No, you did." Their love never aged. It only grew softer, deeper, wiser. Every Sunday morning, they took walks through the garden they had built together decades ago. The flowers they planted still bloomed, just as their love did. "Do you remember our first kiss?" Emilia asked one morning, laughing. "How could I forget?" Hyun smiled. "It was the moment I realized I wasn't broken anymore." He kissed her forehead, the same way he always had, whispering, "I'll keep loving you until the last breath I take." Years later, after Hyun passed peacefully in his sleep, Emilia found a letter he had left beneath their favorite tree in the garden. It read, "My dearest Emilia, you taught me that love is not learned in a day. It's lived every day. You showed me that strength is not pride, but kindness. You gave me a family, a heart, and a reason to become more human. When you read this, know that I am not gone. Every petal that falls here, every laugh our children make, every sunrise you see, that's me, still loving you. Forever yours, Hyun." Emilia pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling silently. And as the evening sun touched her face, she whispered into the wind, "I'll see you at every sunrise, my love." Years later, their children continued their legacy. Eun-ho running the Hearts Without Borders Foundation, and Hannah becoming an artist painting scenes of their parents' love story. And in the garden of their old home, a plaque remained beneath the tree, engraved with words that defined their journey. He hated her kind, until love taught him humanity. She forgave his past, until love made him whole. Together, they will be built forever. And even after decades, every spring, 2 butterflies, one golden, one black, were often seen fluttering above the tulips, reminding everyone that true love never dies. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.